All right, welcome everybody to our second part with our fabulous chief instructor here at Simraceway, Nico Rondet. Welcome, Nico.
Hello.
Bonjour, should I say. He's French, Brazilian, one of those two. Anyway, depending on what year it was.
Depending on who won the last race.
That's true, that's true, yeah.
These days.
So anyway, what we're going to talk, last time we were here, we were talking about degressive braking. That's the initial point of getting on the brakes into a corner with an aero-dependent car.
With any car, but even more so with an aerodynamic car, because you'd be even more degressive as we said there.
So managing the grip levels as they change when the aero kind of goes away as the speeds decrease. Well, now we're going to kind of move on to what I feel, and I think Nico agrees, he doesn't agree with me often, but he might do here, is probably the most crucial part that any driver can do on a track to get the optimum out of the car. It basically sets the stage, after the initial braking obviously, for actually the corner speed through the corner. So do you want to kind of describe to us what we talk about when we have our students come in here about getting the car into the corner effectively?
Yeah, first, I mean, when we talked about degressive braking last time, we established the zones 1, which is the aerodynamic one. Zone 2, which is where you're doing all the downshifting, the blipping, the heel toe, which is such a problem for so many people, as we found out over the years.
Yes.
And then you get into zone 3, which is the brake release, which is now the only reason you are still on the brakes is no longer to slow down. It is to make the car turn better. If you could achieve the same thing without slowing down any further, you would. But you need to use that kinetic energy on the front tires to help them. Ultimately, everything has understeer. If you have oversteer, you can always go faster. Just understeer it as you go.
Right.
It's what you need to battle around. But understeer is the enemy. So that brake release is very key. Because if you're on the brakes too hard, what happens when you're on the brake extremely hard? You lock up the front tires.
Right.
But even before you get to that lockup of the front tires, which now the car doesn't turn at all, right in between that threshold or stress, the tires are getting asked to do a lot of work for braking. And simple math, if 100% of the grip is going towards braking, how much is left for cornering?
That would be 0, unless you're really good.
Nice.
And when those people
you're
can
cheating
work
really well.
when they can work at 110% level,
Yes.
those guys could probably get away with it. Me being a mere mortal, you nearly being mortal, we always have to give up to gain something, right?
Yeah.
As you said, 100% grip. If you're using it in a straight line for braking, as soon as you start to turn that wheel, that's when the tire would lock. So therefore, it leads us to believe that in order to gain grip from that tire to turn with, we have to take some of that 100% braking force, correct?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, and it's that blend. That's what the driver does. It's that balancing where you're releasing the brakes at the same rate as which you are steering. And you're taking that grip away from braking and introducing it to cornering. Right. Until you get to the point where you're cornering to the maximum and the car is doing nothing but cornering. The tires are doing nothing but cornering as hard as they can.
Right. And this has become all the way more tricky when you're talking about a car with the aero coming into play as well. You're in a normal car, the grip level is the grip level for the most part at most speeds, you know. But with a car that is rapidly as your braking is rapidly decreasing the aero grip, pushing those tires down the ground, you've got to even be more aware and more sensitive to those situations.
I see we'll be braking, and when I get onto the brakes, I'll be braking hard at first, and then I will be easing off, and turning. And that's when, at that point, I am done with my real braking. I'm actually starting to turn, and then my foot will go over. Now, how quickly at that point, I may choose to go like this. If my car just became loose, the rear end start to break away, well, now I need to transfer the load back towards the rear. So I have already all the speed that I need. I would go back to being ready to get back to power. I don't want to get back to power too soon because that may induce understeer again and I will have to slow down again. But if I get the car to just, as I'm coming off the brakes smoothly, get it to rotate and I end up turning less than I need to, that will eventually allow me to carry the most speed I can through the corner. And that's the key, because you're on the brakes hard at first, you're downshifting, you're trying to brake late, and then as you start to come off the brakes, it's tempting sometimes to stay on too long.
If you're a scaredy cat like me.
And and that will induce understeer, which will lead you to do what? Slow down more.
Now, something we talk about Racing School 101 is something that's used probably all over the world. As far as we know, I don't really understand the other languages, so we'll have to just accept that fact that they do it in France and Italy and all that stuff. But we call it the string theory. So do you want to kind of explain that? It kind of simplifies things a little bit, because obviously there's a very technical side to a lot of things with the brakes and the air, etc. But kind of so that everyone's kind of aware what your feet should be doing at the same time as your hands are doing something else.
Yeah, actually that's, first of all, the way the engineers like to refer to all of that grip level, they like to talk about the circle of friction. Basically your tires have this much grip, and if you're braking, all of it is longitudinal. So you are having a force that is the full extent of that diameter radius of that circle, which would be the opposite. You could actually put just as much grip on power, on acceleration. And when you're cornering, it is all for one side or the other. Your job as a driver is to keep the vector of the combined forces right on the edge of that perimeter of the circle. Because of course you could just brake, get off the brakes, forces back to center, turn hard, go right to the exit, or to the edge of the circle in there, but you lost a lot of that tire capability. Your job as a driver is to keep it right on the edge of the perimeter, going one to the other. That's what the smoothness is. And that's a very complicated way to represent it. So, okay. So we talked about the string theory and everything, which was a good way to resume all of the engineering friction circle and everything. Imagine that there is a string attached at the bottom of the spoke here, the 6 o'clock spoke from my steering wheel. Whenever I turn left or right, it pulls on the string. The other end of the string will be attached to my toe, right here. And then, if I'm on the gas, on the straightaway, that string is taut. I cannot turn. Then I will go to brakes. That string is still taut. And then I have a turn coming. I need to turn. And for me to be able to free some grip to the tires, I need to give up the brake pressure. And it's reverse proportionality, as we have discussed before. What I give up on the brakes, I can get on the steering. And then once I am cornering hard, G-force are pulling me onto the side and everything, I'm looking into the corners I should, I want to go back to power. That's what we all want to do.
We're all racers after all, right?
And I can't. And I can't, because this string is still taut to my toe until I can start to turn out. I don't need to wait for my hands to be fully straight, but whatever degree, whatever level of reducing the steering input I get, I can get back to power. It's not an exact science relationship, because the steering rack is not proportional to your throttle, but for this figure we're going to imagine that it is. So basically whatever you give up on the steering, you get on the throttle until you're down straight. And that's basically the string theory. We actually always joke around that the string is not good enough, because we can break a string very easily. So you need to make this a big fat cable. Once you are at the limit, that is the only truth. Of course, if you're below the limit, you can get on the gas, turn, you can do anything. But when you get to the limit, that theory just takes over. There is no way around it. And we always try, right, Paul?
Absolutely.
We always try.
I'm on my qualifying lap. I'm going to try and break it.
That's right.
Every time it breaks.
And then we bitch about it.
That's right. But and that's the thing when we teach at the school, is people, as you say, this is only true at the limit.
Yeah.
Right? Most people, when they drive every day, or even if they come to a track day and they have
they're way below the limit.
Proper Nico Rondet training, they're still below the limit, so they get away with a lot of these hitting the gas before on the wheel, etc. And so, but once you get up to that limit, it is essential that you follow this procedure. Right.
And that's why we break down in so many different drills where it's safe and you can actually do that in a safe environment on a skid pad or whatever it is, so that you don't pay a big price, so that you can have it ingrained. If you have to think about it, too late. You know, it needs to be, that's the only way you know, that's how you do it. To be honest, even when you're below the limit, if you were to do this the right way, you will have better efficiency, which means better fuel mileage, better tire wear, better everything, and it's a lot cooler.